All right, Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome Dr. Farah. Thank you for joining us today on this session on the importance of mental well-being during the COVID-19 crisis. So first of all, Dr. Farah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you here. This is a topic that has been very personal for me as well, and I was really, really honored to start this conversation and actually get people talking about mental health and why it's important and what we need to do to address it. So first of all, I would just like to say that the NIC has introduced this platform, especially to all the attendees. We have introduced this platform because we feel like there are a lot of people who are in their own homes and spaces talking about mental health or just the concerns and the uncertainty that is going around with the global pandemic situation that is happening around the globe. So our feelings are mutual. We're all feeling pretty much the same thing, whether on a different day or a different week. But we thought that the NIC should bring about this platform and have one platform where all of us can come together and talk about these issues. I have Dr. Farah here with me today. So Dr. Farah is an experienced psychotherapist and coach. She offers psychotherapy and counseling to individuals, organizations, and families. She has contributed in the fields of counseling and psychotherapy in different cultures in Pakistan, US, UK, and she has also worked with very renowned organizations like Telenor Pakistan. She's worked with Population Council, WHO, and the UN as well. So welcome, Dr. Farah. It's a pleasure having you here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me such an impressive introduction. I don't even recognize me.
Thank you. I think I'll start the discussion. I would just like this to be a very casual talk, although the conversation or the topic that we're going to be discussing is not so casual. I'd like to first start on discussing
I've lost you, Sonia. I lost you.
I am so sorry. I mean, Murphy's Law always kicks in. Dr. Farah, if you could also press your space bar and unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, we can. Apologies, everyone. I think it's just the technical errors do come in our way. I'm just, so I was talking about why it is important for us to discuss this topic. It is something that is being discussed. We just wanted to bring it on a singular platform. So Dr. Farah, in your case, why do you think it's important for us, to be talking about mental health? What are some of the initial triggers or signs that can help us or help the audience know or be aware of the fact that they need to seek professional help and why there's no harm in that? And lastly, why do you think talking about mental health is such a taboo in not just our society, but many societies over the globe?
Okay, thank you. Let's start one by one. So what is mental health and why is it important? I've always found it interesting that we sort of tend to divide mental health and physical health. Health overall is the well-being of the individual. But when we refer to, and we must divide the mental health part, it refers to how we think, how we feel, how we act, how we interact with people, how we interact with ourselves, how we handle stress, how we make choices and decisions during the course of our life. These are our emotions, our psychological processes, our social well-being. It is important at every stage of our life, whether it's childhood, adolescence, or adulthood. Factors that contribute to mental health, biological factors, our brain chemistry, our life experiences, our family experiences, our family history of mental health. The idea, again, is to be able to achieve one's full potential, be productive, and be able to contribute to ourselves, our communities, and things that are important to us. Um, how can we do this? Can it be done? Yes, most certainly. I think living life to the full is a right that all of us have. So if you look at the continuum, on the one hand, we're talking about mental health or mental illness. On the other side, we're looking at well-being. And we're talking about how we can be the maximum that we are. So in order to achieve that, we can seek professional help. We can try and connect with others. We can try and be positive. Again, it sounds very cliched, but it is certainly an approach to life and being mindful about how we tackle things. Keeping yourself healthy. So just like the physical aspect will affect the mental health will affect your physical being. So it's one holistic piece that we're looking at. It's amazing how helping others actually helps us and helps us stay positive. So that's just sort of a preamble to what mental health overarching theme is. Um, what are the signs, symptoms, initial signals that we can look at? Think of it like a normal curve. So if an average person is sleeping 6 hours or 8 hours, and for example, they start doing 10 hours or 11 hours, or they start doing 4 hours, this is outside the normal curve. It's unusual, it's unexpected. Similarly, if you're having too much to eat or too little to eat, or you feel like you're losing your energy or you're just too hyperactive, you start feeling that nothing really matters. You start getting unexplained aches and pains in your body. You start getting angry. You start feeling like you need to fight with people. You feel that you're hopeless. You feel that your relationships are insignificant. You start feeling you're getting sort of mood swings. Um, More severe aspects could be somebody wanting to harm themselves, God forbid, or harm somebody else. Um, Inability to do your daily tasks. So, just to wrap it up, essentially anything that goes outside your normal curve, whatever that is a sign for you to start recognizing that I might need help. Um, I think the third point you made was about taboo, and when I got interested in this field, which was from what I recollect, somewhere around age 13, I think this was very close to my heart. How do we define normal? How we define crazy? How we define different? Um, it really varies, and all of us listening in, all of us talking about this, would recognize that a family or a unit or an individual or a society or a culture will have their own norms, their own values, which they would consider to be average. And anything again outside of that is difficult for them to comprehend. So the definition of normal, maybe for you or I, could be very different for somebody else. So historically, it's been very difficult for all of us to come to a consensus about a concise definition. However, we do have sort of medical gold standards for assessments. But the idea is wherever the behavior starts deviating significantly from the norm, whatever that norm is, the red signals or the red flags go up. Um, Most of us feel that if somebody's got a broken arm or a broken leg, they need our sympathy, and we relate to it, we empathize with it, we try and understand, and we try and communicate. But if you've got something called mental illness or something called mental stress or something which is invisible, something that cannot be explained. If I were to start crying in front of you right now, most people would try and sympathize. But if I say, oh, I'm having anxiety here, probably nobody would relate to it. Nobody would understand what this is because it's not something that will immediately be manifested. So our tendency is to try and rationalize our illnesses, particularly things that are of the mind. The historic representation of mental illness or insanity, again, that end of the continuum is not very pleasant, and we all recognize that. So the
Yeah,
stigma has been cemented in societies. And I mean, we're talking about our society right now, but again, if you go back a little bit, it's been the case in many other societies. It still prevails in many other societies. It's hard for people to comprehend something that is not obvious, that is not explainable.
yeah,
Anything that is related to something called abnormal. So हम किसी बच्चे को मुड़ के कहते हैं, this is abnormal behavior, या आप क्या कर रहे हैं, this is not how people behave, या किसी adult को कहते हैं. What you're doing is you're giving them a sort of natural nexus to start feeling shame, embarrassment, guilt, which results almost inevitably in the individual feeling isolated and feeling like they're alone and they cannot seek help, which is sort of very sort of directly intertwined. Because if we start feeling shame and we start feeling embarrassed and guilty about something, we don't want to
yeah.
talk about those things. So eventually their progress is hindered or limited. And I think that that becomes a sort of paradox in this, because then people say, well, they don't get well, do they? If they're not seeking help, or if they're not going beyond a certain point, then it's very difficult for them to recognize, and it's demoralizing. It's discriminatory, and it's damaging to their sort of well-being. The thing to remember here is it's an obstacle which can be overcome with the right tools, support, and actions. So I think it's important to recognize that how do we want to live our lives? Is it just floating on the water, and you get one hiccup or one small wave and you feel like you're going to be overturned, and you start getting your negative thoughts and you go down the spiral and you feel like you can't get out of this? Or you start thinking, no, it's not just getting out of this or just floating on the water, but we actually want to make the effort and go beyond this, live our life, seek our potential, be productive, um, be happy. And if you want to do that, then we need to work and strive towards this together.
That's
Um,
true.
I think that, sorry.
No, no, you can continue, and then I have a follow-up question.
Okay, so I'll just sort of wrap this up. Particularly pertinent to our setup here. Our first call is the family, and it's critical that the family also tries to recognize or accept that if somebody is going through a hiccup or a problem and they're finding it difficult to deal with it, it's reasonable to let them seek professional help. What the professional help does is they can come in from a very sort of objective point of view. The same people we love and we care for, if we don't understand how they want help, our love and care can actually become a hindrance. So,
That's
yes,
true.
family is the first call, and yes, they're the ones who are going to care for you and love you the most. But there's help which is more objective, and that can be sought, and there's a reason why that help is available.
That's true. Dr. Farah, I would like to, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned families because my follow-up question was related to that. You mentioned that the triggers for your mental health are in your biological factors, your brain chemistry. But I would also like to ask you, what about childhood traumas? Because I feel most of us, I mean, while we are kids, we go through a few. All of us, I believe, have. I would probably be speaking out for most of the population that we go through childhood traumas, and at that time we're too young or too little to comprehend or understand what's going on. We suppress emotions, and sooner or later during our adolescent or later years they do come out. So I would also like to ask you how can we, because these are, I feel like these are emotions or suppressed emotions or feelings or thoughts that are at the very, very back of our minds, really dug in somewhere deep. So how do you think these can come about? Because they do come around when you are growing up, and I feel like they play a major role in anxiety and panic attacks, and which will bring us to our next question. But I would just like to ask you about specifically childhood traumas.
So what's the question? So that I stay exactly with the question. You're saying how
So
does it?
how connected, yes, how connected is our mental health to the childhood experiences that we face, basically?
I think that's a very, very important question, and thank you so much for bringing it up. That brings me to a different sort of topic, which is called parenting. हमारे हमारे उर्दू में एक लफ्ज़ है परवरिश और तरबियत. उन दोनों चीज़ों का कोई मुतबादिल नहीं है अंग्रेज़ी में, actually. How we invest in our children, how we spend time with them, what we're going to do with them, how we will deal with their anxieties and their stresses and their traumas. Can we make that environment open enough for them to reach out? Because, like we said, family is the first
Yeah.
call. If you allow that child to have that relationship, um, you will minimize the problems that they will have in adulthood. You can at least try and minimize those problems. You're absolutely right. All those things that are suppressed do come up, they do pop up.
Yeah.
It's almost like, it's this sort of uh, boiling water inside us, and it needs an
Yeah.
egress or an exit, and it will find an egress or an exit, either through anger or through anxiety or through low self-esteem or uh, a feeling that you know everything. Something that you experienced in your childhood will be reflecting in how you will deal with your life at a later stage. So yes, to sort of respond to your question very quickly, absolutely. What can be done, I think,
Okay.
reaching out again, once you become aware of this, reaching out for help. Before that, the family can intervene. The family can try and help. Sometimes you'd be surprised if we do reach out, even in families. It's helpful. You can express your anger, you can express your emotions, you can sometimes burden them with it and see what the outcome is. But this in itself is a very heavy topic.
Yeah, I think we can leave it for a later session as well. I'd like to start with another question, and actually, it's connected to a personal story of mine. I feel like all of us at some point in our life are in a phase of self denial. Physical health is very noticeable, right? Your arm is hurting, your leg is hurting, you have a cut, you can put bandage on it, or आपको अगर बुखार है, you can take some tablets and bring the fever down. But I think mental health does not kind of give you those. I mean, it does give you triggers, but sooner or later, these are things that are very, very quiet, and then they start to scream at a later stage if not really attended that well. So my question to you is connected with a story of mine as well, and not very recent, well, but very a few years back, I have been, and I think I'm speaking for most of the people here. We do in our lives sometimes or the other face a feeling that is very unknown to us, that scares us, and later on we find out that it was either a panic attack or an anxiety attack or something that was really, our thoughts were jumbled up, we could not figure out. So I mean, I feel like these are all connected, but I am no expert, so I would like to ask you in very simple layman English, what is anxiety, and what do you think are some of the symptoms and triggers for panic attacks? So if you could explain that to us and our audience.
बिल्कुल ठीक है. So in terms of sort of layman's terms, we're not talking about anxiety disorders. I'm talking about something called anxiety and something called panic disorder. Anxiety is something which is almost built in. It's something that is actually built into our systems to protect us. So we have this thing called fight or flight or freeze. And the idea is when we see something threatening or when we're afraid of something, our system goes into either of these mechanisms.
That's true.
So the anxiety part allows us to protect ourselves. Now, when it goes beyond a certain level, it becomes an undercurrent, and it becomes something that will remain a worry or a distress or a fear, which will continue to perturb us, continue to bother us. You could have something called mild or moderate or severe. You must have heard people saying, I'm always anxious, or oh, I have a presentation, but I'm nervous about it. They go in from the teacher or the camera or whatever, and they're fine. It's a mechanism that adapts and adjusts. But what are the symptoms, just so people recognize? You can have distress, you can have restlessness, you can have fears, you can have the fear of losing control. That's the one big thing, because remember, we have these one, two, three systems built in. If we feel nothing is working, then we lose control, and that's one of the worst feelings
Yeah.
we have. It's almost like, you feel like you're drowning and you don't know what you're doing, which goes into panic attack, and we'll talk about it in a bit. But physical symptoms in anxiety, again, a manifestation of something called pain, palpitations, sweaty hands, shortness of breath. Some people complain that they're choking. You can be sweating, or you could get sort of hot flushes, or you could get uh, trembling or shaking hands, numbness, headaches. Some people complain of feeling dizzy. I've seen people actually just faint, and they wouldn't know that they're anxious, but they would just go flat on and then get up.
Wow.
So causes, it could be anything. It could be work related, it could be family related, it could be your social situations, it could be traumatic life experiences, like you mentioned, it could be chronic illness, it could be other problems, medications, physical illnesses. Like I said, anxiety in itself can be life-saving as well, and maybe we'll talk more about it in some other context. Panic attack, on the other hand, is much more severe. So think of it like, we've got the system intact. We get the information. We've got the reasonable, rational side, which starts processing things. We've got the emotional side that gives us a lot of information. The information comes in from the reason. The emotions try and manage themselves down. If the balance is somehow toppled, and the system starts recognizing that the emotions are taking over instead of the reason, then you have a short circuit, and there's a lot of sort of crosstalk in between. And what happens is we try and push the panic button, exactly like, God forbid, if somebody's having an accident, you don't know what's happening, and you start pushing your accelerator instead of your brake. So it's like,
Yeah.
boom, I'll push the panic button, and your system is just sort of collapsing. So you feel like you've completely lost control. You don't know what's happening. It's essentially the emotion taking over and the reason not being able to justify whatever is going on. You can actually experience anxiety and panic together at the same time. So anxiety itself could lead to panic. Panic attacks could be sudden, or they're very intense, and they're more disruptive than anxiety. They can be overwhelming. If somebody has a panic attack, they'll probably fear that they might have another panic attack. So it could be because of something
That's
expected.
good. Yeah.
Sorry?
No, sorry. And that kind of like adds to the actual panic attack as well.
Exactly. So it
Yeah.
could be of something that you expect, or it could be out of something that you don't expect. But it's just the system is not being able to cope with things.
Okay. And Dr. Farah, do you think it depends on person to person? I feel like some people are mentally stronger as compared to some people generally being very sensitive personalities. Or does the attack or the anxiety feel the same for everyone?
I think you're absolutely right there. Some of us have a proclivity towards depression or anxiety or something else. It's an underlying thing, right? Some people have
Yeah.
a personality trait which leads them to be more sort of anxious. Some people are more overconfident. Again, it's hard to say if it's actually a personality trait or if it is something
Yeah.
that's been acquired over time. But the argument is, whatever the case be, they can deal with these processes. And if you recognize that you have a tendency to be more anxious about things, then what you do is you try and preempt it a bit more, and you try and take some preventive measures for it.
All right. And coming to, I mean, this is a part of a discussion that because we're on this topic, I'd like to quickly ask if someone is getting a panic attack or an anxiety attack or having this sort of a feeling, palpitations and all of the things that you just mentioned, how can you, at that point in time, calm it down? I mean, I know this is a long term healing that needs to take place, but at that point in time, if someone is experiencing it, what do they do?
Again, I think it's a whole sort of clinical feature that needs to be incorporated. But if you're having a panic attack, if you're with somebody and that somebody can help you, great. If you can sit yourself down, take some deep breaths. Try and close your eyes for if you can. Just close your eyes. Take a couple of deep breaths. What you're doing is you're giving your system oxygen. You're giving your system a little bit of respite, a little bit of time to catch back. uh, you know and the system will catch back. I'm not sure how long it'll take for different people,
Yeah.
and we don't know how severe it is. But if you could just let the system go back and relax a bit, if you are with somebody else, they can have you sit down. If you need to seek help, go see a doctor. If it's that bad, maybe you need to go see somebody immediately. If not, sit back, try and close your eyes, do some relaxation exercises. We've got plenty of those, and they're usually quite helpful, more helpful in anxiety. But if you get into that panic mode, getting yourself a glass of water, taking some deep breaths, and just sitting down, calming yourself down, so all of your sort of physical symptoms calm down as well, so that you can allow your brain to unlock the panic button.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Farah, I feel like with this entire situation, COVID-19 across the world, it's been raising questions, uncertainty. There's obviously talk about being going through a global recession. People are worrying about their jobs, their income. A lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, business leaders who have joined the call today obviously have worries of their own, managing their businesses that they have raised from ground up, and obviously how to keep everyone strong during this phase. So there's a lot of uncertainty involved, and obviously uncertainty is also something that leads to more anxiety because you're not certain of what's going to happen next. So I wanted to ask you, how do you think COVID-19 is affecting businesses? How do you think business leaders can cope and manage with this situation? And right now, all of us, I think, around the globe are literally going through the same routine. We're all in our homes, managing work, home, family, kids in some cases, pets in some cases. So how do you think all of how we can manage this new work from home routine, this work life balance, and how you and any word of advice or message that you can give out to business leaders and entrepreneurs out there who are listening?
So I think the two, three things that you just said, uncertainty is a key word here. The second thing that you mentioned was we're experiencing this globally. Um,
Yeah.
it's a phenomenon. It's the new normal. It's something that we're all experiencing, and I think that becomes a collective experience. It's a learning experience, and it's something. I think it's going to change the learning curve for businesses as well. People are going to explore opportunities together. I think it's going to be
Yeah.
a different world of collaborations. I think businesses will recognize the human cost of this. I hope they will, and how to adjust that cost into their business loss, and how to deal with it. It's an opportunity. I think it's also an opportunity um, to explore how risks can be taken. We're already in a state where risks are being taken. We've been sort of
Yeah.
almost thrown into it. So the question is, okay, and for entrepreneurs particularly, I think it's a great opportunity in their own way, for small businesses, for entrepreneurs, or for big organizations. It's how they will evolve out of this, how they will recognize their role, their positioning. Um, the word that you used, I think that's very significant, and it's going to resound with us for a very long time. The uncertainty, which goes directly into the anxiety and the panic attack, it goes directly into not knowing what's going to happen next. Um, but that in itself gives you the opportunity to to explore what can be done in the future and be creative about things. Your For example, how can you, small businesses, collaborate with bigger organizations, or bigger organizations collaborate with other organizations? How can collective wisdom, which I something that stays with me in this period, how can we use collective wisdom? How are we, all leaders, build their expertise on their previous knowledge? So how are they going to use their previous knowledge into building what they're going to do right now with their competencies? How are they going to see how this is going to affect the future world? How are they going to utilize sort of the digital skills? I know many people have been talking about it, but this shift has happened. It's here. Um,
Yeah.
so be to identify what kind of help we can get, try and seek help, try and adjust to the new normal. I think the recognition, work-life balance, another question that you posed. Um, oh, I'm sorry.
No, no worries. Yeah, so I think we do
So where
have
were
a
we?
couple of, we'll just let you wrap up and then we have some questions pouring in as well. So we were talking about the work from home routine and how we can manage that, how we can stay mentally aware and not bug each other and our families. I think there are two, three things that are happening. I've been talking to my friends and family online, and there are a couple of things that are happening. Everyone's cooking, so everyone's becoming great chefs, trying out new recipes. The other is obviously people are going to more active activities, productivity, and trying out new skills. The third is fighting. So sisters and siblings are fighting, wives and husbands are fighting because they're getting too much of to see too much of each other. So I think that's also one of the signals there. I feel like people need to be more aware of all these triggers as well. So just wrapping up on the work from home and how you think we can cope with all of this and be more mentally aware.
I think allowing, yeah, okay, fine. So we'll just sort of wrap it up on this. I think giving yourself a little bit of space. Everybody is cramped up, so
Yeah,
allowing yourself to take a break for yourself, so that you're not in each other's face all the time. This is unusual. Recognizing that, you know, if you're going through the stress, the other person is also going through stress. Something called empathy. Recognizing that, you know, and giving empathy to yourself as well, and being able to give empathy to your family members and your friends and other people. When you're fighting, again, it's a whole different topic, but when you're fighting, it could be an expression of something else. It's again some stress, some trigger, some frustration. See how you can talk to yourself, give yourself that me time, try and talk to yourself, figure out what's actually happening, and give yourself a break there. It's always helpful to come back and talk to the person, even apologize and connect. This is your time to be able to connect with the same people. I'm not sure how the world is going to unfold, nobody knows, but this is that unbelievable time space that we have. And we can either spend it fighting and arguing and thinking that they're pestering us all the time, or we can say, let's come and have a board game or play something else, or do whatever we enjoy. Be positive. Trust your own resilience. We have the resilience. We're doing this. This is a demonstration of how people jump back.
that's true. Well, and a great message at the very end for us to connect with each other and a good opportunity for us to actually spend time with our loved ones as well. Let's take it to some questions that are coming up from our audience. We have Hanan Tariq. So he's asking you, what is the difference between stress and anxiety? If you can differentiate between the two.
So if you could, thank you for the question. I think if you could just see this as, again, a continuum, where, you know, you've got this end and this end. So you've got a milder form, and then it just sort of goes along the gradient and it increases. So stress could be a good indicator. When you say, I'm stressing out, it is a message your system is saying. If I were to ask you, what do you feel when you feel stressed? What would you say, Sanya? What would you say if I say, what do you
If
experience
I'm
when you feel stressed?
stressed,
Mm-hmm.
I think when I'm stressed, I would feel heightened emotions. I would lose my sleep. I would lose my appetite. I'll just be a very big energy ball snapping at everyone. I think that's personally who I am.
There-
But yeah, that's
and when you were anxious, what would you do? If you were anxious about something, what would you do?
I'd not talk to anyone.
There you
I'd
go.
just go into my own space.
Spot on, exactly. So what
Yeah.
you're doing is in stress, it's still an indicator telling us that there's trouble coming. Be careful, do something about it. You remember the system that we talked about? So the system, the reason, the rational is still working with us, and it's saying, oh, it's stress, do something about it. But when we actually hit anxiety, it's like, okay, stay mom. I can't do this. It's probably not going to happen. And then, of course, we go along the continuum. We can, God forbid, come to the panic attack or something even worse. I hope that
Okay. All
suffices.
right. That covered pretty much all of it. A couple of more questions coming in. So we have Nadeem Ibrahim. He's asking, kids are the ones whose life are mostly disturbed these days. They feel very anxious and scared of what is happening around them. They have so many questions like why, how, and how long. They are frustrated as their lives are restricted, and how do we keep these kids engaged during this time, and how much to tell them about the crisis?
Acha, I lost you for a couple of seconds, so I might have to ask you to repeat that. Sorry.
Okay, so Nadeem Ibrahim, in a crux, in a
Yes, it's
nutshell, was saying that
kids.
basically kids are the ones that are facing a lot of issues. So how do you keep them engaged, number one, during this time, and how much do you tell them about the crisis?
Okay, so engaged is again, I take it as something which is going to connect. It is something that is going to help people connect with each other.
Yeah.
I did a sort of short video on this. I think it sums it up regarding how to handle children. Um, you keep engaged in terms of whatever work you're doing, whatever activity you're involved in, you start involving them in it. So, for example, like you said, cooking. There are things that
Yeah.
we can involve the children in. You don't want to give them sort of sharp forks and knives and put them in any danger, but you can include them. So you're making an omelet in the morning. It could be an activity. You start letting them sort of do something that helps you alongside. As far as telling them is concerned, I think it's a time when it's critical to be honest at a certain level and talk to them. Again, I've done a video for kids. It was aimed for adults, but it's
Yes,
also
I saw
covering.
that video of yours as well. It was very entertaining, very informative,
So
actually, as well.
I'm glad. I'm glad. So I mean, the idea was for parents and for children to watch this together. So you're telling them that you need to wash hands or you need to keep a social distance, and they have these genuine questions. We are all gregarious people. We hug our kids, we kiss them, and we touch them, and all of a sudden we're saying, you have to maintain your social distance.
Yeah.
Um, how do they process it? Being able to tell them, I think this is a situation that we're all in. It's a problem. It's a problem that we're trying to tackle. You are the hero. You are helping us in this. Um, the main problem is if, God forbid, people start falling sick and we have too many people in the hospitals, the heroes there, meaning doctors and other people, won't be able to do anything about it because you'll sort of overload them.
Okay. All right.
Did I lose you?
No, 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 you didn't. You can continue,
Can't
Dr.
hear you.
Farah.
Yes,
Can you
I
hear
can
me
hear
now?
you now.
Okay, perfect. All right. So did you wrap up your thought, or do you want to still continue on that question and then move to the next one?
No, I'm
Sorry?
not sure. Can you ask them if it's okay? Can we move on? I would
Okay.
recommend him watching that video and a couple more that will be coming. I think it's aimed for children. I think he's got a genuine concern. But kids can be involved. I think that you need to tell them this is our time. Give them that time and ask them to give you that space as well. So you communicate and you connect and you let them know that this is something that they need to do, their schoolwork or their homework or their games, so that you have your space. Explain to them as honestly as you can, but don't overburden them with your emotions. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the key things. You
Yeah,
don't want to
that's a key point. Okay. Also, Dr. Farah, the other question, I'll quickly move to the next question. I do think we're a little short on time as well. But maybe you can mention to the person who asked the question earlier where they can view your videos. So if you have a social media page or LinkedIn or somewhere they can go and view these videos.
Sure. So I've got a Facebook page and I've got a YouTube channel. Both you could access with my name. So it's, if you just type DR for doctor and Farah Qadir, full name Farah Qadir, they'd be able to go and access the videos. And then more, hopefully,
Okay.
inshallah.
Okay, perfect, inshallah. All right, so there's another question from Saadullah Arsalan Ahmad. It's quite a long paragraph, but the gist of it is basically how does one person get rid of habitual fretfulness and petulantness in these quarantine days, because pretty much every day seems like the same day, and there's not much to do. So basically, their concern is that they're getting fed up of things happening at home. So how does one break the habitual fretfulness? I hope I summed up that question well.
It's like when you're put in a situation, any of us, and we've all been put in a situation, we really don't have much of a choice. I mean, you do have a choice. You can go out, start doing your things, but like we discussed, the normal outside has also changed. So
Yeah.
getting yourself involved in things that you enjoy, things that you wanted to do, for example, playing a game or playing a sport that you can play on your own. It could be literally any hobby that you had wanted to go back to and you didn't get a chance to. Photography, for one, you could do that. People mix songs, people meditate, people,
Painting,
whatever.
writing. Yeah.
Paint, you know, you can say your prayers, you can do whatever you like. But again, it is that solitude that has been given to you in a way where you can revert back and recognize that this is your time to yourself. The more we get anxious, the more we get frustrated, the more you feel that you're trapped in this. Remember, when you feel trapped, you're going to try and get out of it somehow. And the thing is, we recognize that things are actually not in our control, but we're not even in an illusion right now that things are in our control. But what is in our control is also how we tackle this, how we end up processing this. You could be
Yeah.
creative, you could work towards some project that you want to do. It's, I think it's an opportunity in many, many ways.
Okay. Another question that Sadia has put up. Actually, Sadullah is also asking if he can get this question answers. He's been engaging himself in different online courses, language learnings, also have a small startup entrepreneurial business, which is weed removing and guarding tools for manufacturing. But still doing, after all of this, the family is large enough of 25 members, and still I happen to be fed up. So how do I balance all of this? I think I mean, your your previous answer kind of sums it up. You have to figure out and find time for just yourself,
Yeah,
amongst other things.
I mean, this is also a very genuine thing. The time that we got previously, going out and just being with other people, that used to be your sort of exit and your escape.
Yeah,
Now we're sort of stuck with the 25 people and we don't even have a corner to ourselves. But again,
yeah,
maybe go out for a walk. You know, if you cycle, you can cycle. You can listen to your music. You can go out somewhere. Think of activities that you can do with yourself. And when you're with this huge group of people, see what activities you could do as a joint activity. I mean, I've always wanted a lot of people around me, and he's got them. So see what you can do with
yeah.
25 people in the house.
That's true. You can play. There are a lot of board games you can play with that many people. All right. So there's another question that
You
Sadia, thank
can
you
do
for
anything.
this. I really I'm a fan of this question. So Sadia is basically saying academics have been under too much workload with no boundaries for working online. How to get them de-stressed and manage the work better? Are there any insights for organizations?
Okay, you have to explain this to me because I'm taking it with reference to my field, my
The
work. So
organization.
yeah,
Okay,
so
all right.
explain
So
that to
she's
me.
and I think what Sadia, I hope I can do justice to your question. I do have a lot of friends and my mom who's working in the academic sector, so I do know that people in the academia are working too many hours because it's not just delivering the online courses for the students, it's also preparing for them at the side as well. So she's basically asking how to get them to de-stress and manage the work better. And are there any insights for the organizations to do this better?
Um, okay. So organizations to do what online work? I'm still not being able to get a
I
grip
think
on this.
it's more to do with how they can empathize more with their employees and organize the workload better for the employees.
I mean, the thing is, if people are feeling too much, and they will feel a lot of workload in organizations, again, the shift has affected everybody.
Yeah.
Whether it's academia, what I understood, I can try and explain what I've understood out of this. When we've got too much work and we're doing sort of online courses as well, and we're trying to do our own work as well, it has been um, escalated to a point where we don't know exactly what to do. The,
Yeah.
the key again remains step back a bit, recognize it's you've been given too much. And the too much is because everybody is trying to figure out what needs to be done to get the work done productively. So we don't know what's going to be efficient, we don't know what's going to be productive. Whether it's academia, whether it's organizations, whether it's other larger groups, we need to recognize how we can step back. Yes, it's been thrown at us because the people who are throwing it at us don't know either, and they're dealing with the
Yeah,
same unknown.
that's true.
So when they don't
That's
know
true.
the unknowns, they're throwing, say, okay, let's try this. Okay, let's try this. You you try and let yourself recognize that if I'm doing this much, it's good enough. And I think that's the essence there. It's good enough. I tried to do it. I've tried to deliver as best as I could. It will again evolve. This is also part of that change management which will happen. Um,
Yeah.
and the empathy word that I used earlier, if you could, when you're getting nervous about it, recognize those people don't know either. They really don't know.
Yeah.
They're trying to do the best. And in their figuring out, you might be feeling overburdened. So if you can say and give them feedback, this is what worked for me, this is what I'm trying to do. This got left behind. I mean, even in our regular so-called days before COVID-19, we couldn't do everything, could we? We would leave some
That's
things,
true.
we would have it, and that would be our
That's
work-life
true.
balance.
I think what I would also like to mention here, Dr. Farah, thank you. What actually your discussion kind of made me feel similar feelings, and I realized the way to manage it. It also depends on how you manage your working hours. From divide your working hours from your normal family hours or your office hours, and other than that, your normal hours. Because even when we did used to go to the office, we had a 9 to 5 routine, and after that, we had our evenings to ourselves. So working from home, we do not really differentiate what time is what. We might be having breakfast at 1 p.m., but also working at starting at 9 or 10. So like I think our routines are jumbled up, and as human beings, we do like to have a routine, a set of things that we do on a regular basis. So maybe to answer your question, you could also just a suggestion, just make sure that after 5, or if the nature of your work allows you, you can divide your time accordingly so you don't feel like you're just giving too much of yourself to your office or your organization.
Okay.
Dr. Farah, we have a really interesting question here. Someone just put in that they're basically of course there are people, I mean, as much as I did not want to bring about this point and make people upset, but there are being layoffs. There are people are at place where insecure about their jobs, right? So the person Usman Said is suggesting is if we could recommend some communities where there we could get some motivation or some some discussions around this.
I think that's an excellent idea. When I was saying this whole period is offering opportunities, I used to talk about group sessions. I used to talk about activities which could be done together, because we've been thrown into a situation where many things are bothering many people, and it's sort of a topic, a single topic could cover a lot of people and their questions. I think it's an excellent idea. We should have these opportunities where we could have a collective discussion. um,
Yeah,
and Pakistan, the world over, it's, we get out of that taboo and we say this is happening. I
yeah,
need to talk about the fact that I'm going to be laid off, God forbid. If it happens, what am I going to do? How am I going to deal with it? And that the urgency of this, or the magnitude of it, is forcing people to come to a collective platform. And it gives us the opportunity, people who can deliver this, to actually speak up. So for me, it's an excellent opportunity that people would be ready to receive this information.
yeah. I
Very
I
unpleasant,
agree.
it's going to be, God forbid, layoffs. But even in the layoffs, we'll have to talk about what policies can do, what organizations can do, what other people can do. And we can't come up with one single solution for everybody. But the good thing is we can have these platforms to help them relieve their stress as best as we can.
That's a good point. And actually, Dr. Farah, this is very much in line with what we were discussing the other day of continuing these sessions. So for all the people out there who are listening to us or signed in right now, the NIC basically wants to have these talks on a regular basis. I mean, this was just a very beginner, a very teaser session where we just wanted to kind of bring about this topic, get people to talk about it with each other, with themselves, with their friends, families, and then maybe we could do a series of sessions where we could talk about specific things, so traumas in general, depression in general, anxiety, job layoffs. We could do these community sessions for the audience as well. So I think that's a good key takeaway from today's session. Dr. Farah, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to host you. I enjoyed this discussion. I mean, to be honest, time just went by and I didn't even realize it. Thank you so much for taking out your time for us. And I do hope that we can engage you sometime in the future again on certain topics related to mental health and awareness.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Farah. Take care. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Khud Hafiz.
You too. Khud Hafiz.